So when it comes to organizing your life, most people fall into the trap of overcomplicated systems and pseudo productivity. You start with good intentions, but before long, you're spending more time managing databases and navigating endless subfolders than actually doing the important things in your life. That's why in this video, I'll show you a simple way to organize your life using just Apple Notes. You'll learn how to apply 3 core productivity principles in a way that's simple, sustainable, and flexible. So instead of forcing your life into someone else's complex system, you can build a simple system that fits your complex life. Let's get into it. All right, so I've got a fresh Apple Notes set up here, and the core structure or system that I'm going to show you today can be applied in any tool that you like. It can be on pen and paper or another application. It doesn't have to necessarily be Apple Notes, but for many reasons that I'll discuss, I prefer Apple Notes for this type of thing because of its simplicity, its ability to sync seamlessly between Apple devices and work well offline. It's got a bunch of great features, but at the same time, not too many, unnecessary complexities that you often see in other apps. So it's great for being a simple tool to do this type of thing with organizing your life, productivity, that sort of stuff. And so as you can see on the left-hand side here, I've created 3 main folders, and these are sort of the 3 kind of pillars that this system revolves around. And I'll go through each of these throughout the video and how we'll use these folders to organize your life and be more productive and be more intentional with your time, etc. All right, so starting with the purpose folder. This is where we're going to create a few different documents that together act as kind of like our life compass that's going to guide everything else in our life, from the tasks that we complete to how we spend our time to the goals that we work towards or the projects that we focus on. And there are 3 main documents that I would create here. One is your values, and this is where you can basically list out everything that you care about. When people hear about like values or, asking like, what do you value? It can sound kind of intimidating or abstract, but literally it's just what you actually care about in life, what really matters to you. This can be big picture things like family or freedom, but it can be, little things like just being able to spend some time in nature on a regular basis, or being able to live in a certain location or do a certain thing in the morning, or some kind of hobbies or anything that you care about, because we basically want to establish that in writing because it'll help guide what we want our daily life to look like and everything else. So just make a list of literally anything that you can think of that you care about. You can bucket into different categories or groups, but I wouldn't overthink it too much. We just want to establish that somewhere. Next up, we want to create a vision. And this is basically like a description of what our everyday life will look like if we can live in full alignment with our values. And this is sort of like our ideal daily lifestyle. I often like to think about this in terms of both like a professional vision or a personal vision and a professional vision. And I split it into those 2 categories because whether we like it or not, work in some form will likely be a big part of our life. It's probably the single one thing that takes up the largest amount of time outside of, the rest of our personal life. And because of the complexities that come with, professional lives, whether you're running a business or just working a corporate job or any sort of career, it's worth kind of separating things out in terms of what you want your life to look like in that area. And how I would do this is literally just describe a day in the life in regards to your personal life and also your professional life. And as you're doing this, think about your values, think about, what you really care about and what sort of that ideal lifestyle would look like in both of these areas. All right, next up we have identity. And this is a very important concept that I don't see talked about too much in the productivity space, but essentially it's all about designing your ideal character or this best version of yourself. What are the character traits that you would embody? What are the sort of daily habits? Who are you as a person? And if you imagine kind of like designing your character for a video game or a movie, like what would you design yourself to be like? And this is really important because in many cases, what holds people back from building their ideal lifestyle or achieving a particular goal isn't, their productivity system or how they organize their time or even the projects that they work on. It's simply them as a person. Like in their current state, they are not the version of themselves who is capable of reaching their goals. It sounds maybe a little harsh, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't mean that the version of you sucks, or like you shouldn't be happy about where you are now, or grateful for the progress that you have made. It's just the simple reality that while you're not at a particular place that you want to get to in your life yet, whether it's reaching a certain level in your career, or getting to a certain level of income, or building a family, or whatever it is that you kind of want to work towards, the version of you right now just hasn't been able to do those things yet. So it does mean that something likely has to change. This could be kind of how you approach certain situations, how you handle conflict, or how you spend your daily life. There's a number of different things that can go into your identity. A lot of it can be based around habits or just character traits. But essentially, in order to reach whatever goal you haven't reached yet, you need to become this new upgraded version, level 10.0 version of yourself who can reach that goal. And so I won't ramble anymore about this topic because it can get very deep and there's a lot of different layers to it. But essentially, we want to think about, okay, if I had already achieved all my goals and I'm living that ideal lifestyle vision that we established earlier, like what type of person would I be? Because chances are you wouldn't be the same version of you that you are today, because otherwise you probably would have already reached those points. But like, what would be different? It might not be something significant. It might be just like one sort of negative tendency that you have, where you end up just overthinking things and switching up your life path and just revamping everything instead of, sticking with whatever project it is you're working on. Or it might be, some other change that needs to be made. But anyways, establish that kind of ideal character version of you on this document here. So here we were basically design the best version of yourself. And so now we've got kind of like these three main documents, and these are going to be sort of living documents, not something that we just fill out once and we're done. These are obviously going to be things that we're going to have to come back to regularly, update. Our values might change over time. We might discover new things that we care about, or realize there are certain things that actually we don't really care about that much, or our vision for our career or our personal life is going to change as well. And same with our identity. So don't stress too much about like making these perfect from the get-go. We just want to get something down, and we'll come back to it regularly, every quarter or so, to update these. But this is definitely a tricky process going through these things, but it is definitely worth it because everything in this purpose sort of pillar of this system is crucial for guiding our productivity and everything else. I found that a lot of issues related to procrastination, or actually, following through on the plans that you make for yourself, is because of some misalignment here with your values, vision, or identity. And by establishing these and tying these to your productivity, it can help overcome a lot of those issues that people commonly face with productivity. And I just feel like figuring out your purpose, designing your life compass, and filling out these types of documents is so important that I made it the very first module of my upcoming course, Purposeful Productivity. Basically, I'll walk you through kind of how to come up with your values and build a life vision that feels meaningful and really aligned with the things that you care about, and then how to design kind of your productivity system to support that, and how to continuously make progress and stay aligned and consistent. If you're interested, you can click the top link in the description to join the waitlist. It'll be launching later this year. All right, next up we've got productivity, and this is where things I guess can get a little fun if you're a weird nerd like me and you like this type of stuff. But essentially, I think a lot of people overcomplicate productivity. They end up using, these complex Notion templates and different apps and stuff, and it's really unnecessary. Productivity is really just about like doing the most important work that's aligned with your goals and is going to actually get you results. You just got to do that. And so whatever way works for you to get that done is the best way. That can be different for different people depending on the complexity of your work or your goals or just your life. You may need more complex systems, or you might be fine with simpler systems. I personally would always default to the simplest approach. If we were in a perfect world and everything was easy, all you would have to do is just have like an index card and write down the most important thing you need to do, and you would just do that thing. But in reality, for many of us, especially if you have like a regular full-time job, things can be a little more complex. There can be a lot of moving parts, deadlines and things that you need to manage and look ahead to. And so I'm going to walk you through kind of a basic system that you can use just in Apple Notes like this that I think will help handle most situations of varying complexity like that. So the first part is we need to create an inbox. And this is basically going to be a document where we capture any sort of ideas or tasks that come to mind throughout our day. One of the biggest sources of stress and distraction is when you are working on something, or maybe spending quality time with your family or loved ones, and you get some thought in your mind about, oh, like I need to do this thing, or I need to respond to this email, or I forgot I need to, order this thing on Amazon, or you just have some idea about your work or your goals or anything. The last thing you want to do is let that just linger and sit in your mind, because especially if it's important, it's like, okay, you're thinking like, I can't forget this thing, but then you also need to focus on what you're doing. And then it's just kind of bugging you, pulling your attention away. You want to be able to just write this down in a safe place, get it out of your head, and be confident that you'll see it later when you can, properly take the time to think about it. And that's what this inbox is for. So you're just going to write down any tasks or ideas that come to mind throughout the day. And you don't have to get fancy with it. Don't worry about labeling things, organizing, tagging things. You can just, write whatever comes to mind, go down a couple lines, write some more, and just do that. I like to have this up on my computer and also on my phone. I assign the action button on my iPhone. I don't have my phone here, but essentially there's this on the iPhone 16 or 15 Pro, they added this button on the side where you can press it and it opens up your inbox note, or I've assigned it to a shortcut that opens up this inbox note. And that way I can very quickly jot down ideas and get back to what I'm doing. Same thing on the computer. You just want to have a place dedicated to this type of thing. Next up, I would make something like a quarterly plan. And this is basically going to help us take a chunk out of our big picture life vision and goals and say, okay, what are like the key projects or initiatives that I want to move forward in the next 3 months that directly support that broader life vision. I would stick to at most 3 at a time. And so just write top 3 projects to focus on for the next 3 months. And you can, this is pretty flexible. You can list out the projects, list out maybe some of the sub tasks or recurring tasks related to each of them, or just kind of like a description of what you want to get done in the next 3 months. This is something that we're going to constantly refer back to throughout the quarter. So it's important to, at the start of the quarter, write these out and establish it. And then basically we'll work in sort of quarterly sprints where every 3 months or so we'll, work really hard on these initiatives and then kind of reset, do a review, and pick another 3 for the next month. And then we'll kind of continue that cycle throughout the year. All right, next up, we'll create another note for our weekly plan. And this is basically where we will take a chunk out of our quarterly plan to focus on for the week ahead. So if we think about all the tasks that we could potentially do to contribute towards these main projects that we've established for the quarter, what are the ones that we're going to focus on for this week, and just establish those on one list and forget about everything else. And this is really helpful because it creates some kind of buffer between, the big picture and allows you to focus in and stop getting overwhelmed with everything you need to do in your entire life and just focus on 1 week at a time. So pick key tasks, contribute to quarterly goals to focus on this week. And as for how to organize your plan for the week here, I won't get too deep into that. I've got another video on my channel, but essentially we can leave it up to the demands of that particular week. Sometimes I'll just have a list of all the things. Sometimes I'll organize it by different sort of categories or roles in my life, whether it's, for my job or for my YouTube channel, for business, or for just personal household tasks. but it really depends on the individual week. And then finally, we'll have a today note. And this is going to take things down one more layer. So we've got our quarterly plan, we've got our weekly plan, and then we're going to drill down just to the individual day. And it's a similar mindset. We're going to take a look at the tasks that we planned out for that week and take out a little chunk to focus on today. And this is what we're going to refer to throughout the day itself. We're not going to worry about our weekly plan or a quarterly plan or a vision or anything. We're just going to take a look at this note and it'll tell us exactly what to do on today. And so there's a couple ways you could organize this. The nice thing about Apple Notes is you're not stuck to some rigid structure like you might be with another app or system. You can kind of do things however you want to on a particular day. So sometimes I'll just like write some times on here and organize things around that. So maybe 6 a.m. wake up, and then you could have like task 1, task 2, task 3, and then maybe you have lunch in here, and then task 1, task 2, task 3, and then maybe you go to the gym here, and then you've got dinner, and then I don't know, some like household task or something like that. And then throughout the day, you can just look at this and literally check things off. You know, it's not anything fancy, it's very simple, but this way we can focus on actually like doing the things and not doing some complicated, pretty aesthetic organization thing, because that stuff doesn't actually matter. What matters is that you actually do these important things that you need to do on a particular day. So this really simplifies things and allows you to focus on actually doing the work and not just over planning and under executing, which is a problem that a lot of people seem to face. And I would recommend pinning the inbox note and the today note, because those are the ones that you're going to access most frequently on a daily basis, you know, when you're capturing random tasks and ideas, and then when you're actually executing your plan for the day. And I would go as far as setting up some shortcuts on your computer or your phone to like quickly open up these two notes. That way you can reference them as quickly as possible. All right, now next up, we need a place to basically store and manage our other tasks. These are things that we aren't necessarily going to do today, maybe not even this week, but we know that we need to work on it eventually. And these are often things that maybe we captured in our inbox and we've reviewed that at the end of the day and decided, okay, like, yeah, I need to work on this at some point. It's probably not going to happen this week, but I don't want to, forget about this. That's where we can create a separate list for managing our tasks. Now, this is where things can get way too complicated very easily, and you don't need much complexity here. In many cases, it really depends on the nature of the work that you do and your life. But I would recommend just having different lists for different roles or, main areas of your life that require this level of task management. So for many people, this would be, some form of work. Maybe you have a job. For me, I know I also have to do stuff related to my YouTube channel, posting videos and stuff, and then other just like business related tasks. And so I might create these 3 lists, and maybe actually I'll have one for just household tasks. And these are kind of like the main sort of areas of my life where I have actual like tasks that I need to manage and things that I need to remember. And as for organizing these lists, again, with all of this productivity stuff, I would keep it, as simple as possible. In many cases, all you might need is just literally like a list, task 1, task 2, task 3. And you can just come to this list and check things off. Maybe you can drag things around if something's a higher priority. But really, the goal is to focus on actually doing things and checking things off, not getting caught up kind of organizing the status and adding tags or a lot of the things that you see typically in productivity apps or task managers. Now, of course, there will be cases where just having a long running list like this isn't going to be enough to keep up with the demands of your work. And the great thing about Apple Notes is you can add some more complexity as needed, but I would be cautious about this because in many cases, especially if you're struggling to execute your plans and just do the work, you don't need to add more complexity to your system. But that being said, there are a few things that you can do. One thing that I like is to just add a couple sections here based on the status of these tasks. And so what I would do, and this is kind of like a Kanban board type of workflow where you have maybe one category for active, one for queue, and then maybe one for just completed, maybe one for like waiting to hear back from. And how I would approach this is you have your long queue of tasks like this, and then you have active tasks. And there's basically what you do is you limit the active tasks that you're working on. So I would recommend no more than 3 at a time. And you don't worry about anything that you have on the queue. You can let this get really long as you need it to be. But then once you finish one of the tasks, you can check it off, you can delete it, or you can, if you need to see it later for some reason, you can put it down here. And now you can move up another task to the active category. And you just keep working like that. Okay, you finished task 2, that goes to completed, and then you move task 7 up to active. And you finish task 3, move that down to completed, and now you can open up a space for task 8. But again, in many cases, you probably don't need this. A lot of task management is just figuring out what you don't actually need to do and just deleting tasks from your list and just focusing on the things that actually move the needle forward towards whatever goals you have in that area of your life. And so just as a reminder, make sure that when it comes to all of this life system stuff, make sure that the complexity fits the actual needs of your life. For example, with household tasks, maybe you don't even need to like have a list in your Apple Notes. Maybe this is something that you can just have like a little whiteboard on the fridge of your home and you just write the stuff there, and then you and your family can look at that little whiteboard, and that's all you need. There's no point in kind of over optimizing in every single area of your life when you don't need to. You can save that energy for when it really matters for something that's more complex, like running a business or your full-time job or anything like that. Right, and lastly, we have the progress folder. And this is a very important part of the system because we've got our purpose and sort of the general direction that we want our life to go in. We've got our productivity, which is, how we actually do the things to get us closer to our life vision. But we need a way to analyze our progress and reflect on the things we've done and the progress that we've made, to get us closer or maybe farther away from our life vision, and what, if anything, needs to change with the direction that we want to take our life in, or how we approach our productivity and managing our time and things like that. All right, so how I would approach this progress folder is basically like a mini journal where we capture our reflections, our daily, weekly reviews, quarterly reviews, kind of just thoughts about how our life is going. And we do that all in this folder. You can just create a new note, and let's say, for example, like I like to do a weekly review every Sunday, and I just write out kind of my thoughts about how the week went. I'll look over, my weekly plan from the previous week, look at the things that I did get to, the things I didn't get to, look back at, my vision and my values, remind myself of those, and just write out my general thoughts about how things have been going and what adjustments or things I might need to focus on for the week ahead. And this is really important because we have our purpose and kind of the direction that we want our life to go in, and we have our productivity, which is like taking the actions and doing the things to get us there. But our progress is really determined by how we analyze the results of our actions and determining whether the results of our actions are, what we actually want, or if they're not heading in the right direction, or of what changes we might need to make. And so it's really important to take the time to think about how things are going, because otherwise you could end up just working really hard at things for years and going nowhere, or going in the completely opposite direction of where you actually want your life to go. So it's very crucial that we take time at least once a week to do some type of review. So anytime you're sitting down to intentionally review your progress or reflect on how things are going, I would just create a new note. And as you're doing that, literally just write out your thoughts, sort of stream of consciousness of how you're feeling. And this way you're capturing those. You can kind of clarify your thoughts in a better way. And just the act of writing down things like that will solve so many issues of overthinking and feeling overwhelmed. Anytime that like I'm worried about just anything in my life, if I just take a few minutes to literally just write out what I'm feeling, just the act of doing that will help you feel a lot better with just your direction in life and just everything you've got going on. All right, so that gives you kind of the foundation of kind of a simple system to organize your life. I know I didn't get that in depth with like actually going through and creating each of these documents. It's just too much to do in a single YouTube video, but hopefully this will give you a good foundation and ideas for a way you can sort of simplify how you organize your life and your productivity using an application like Apple Notes. Now, if you want to see more specifics on how I do things, like for example, my weekly review where I take a chunk out of my quarterly plan and turn it into a more actionable plan and what that sort of step-by-step process looks like, you can click this video right here to see how I plan out my week step by step. I'll see you over there.